Next to Muhammad is Tamerat Negera. Tamerat fled Ethiopia and was able to return, but recently was held for 117 days without charges. Tam, how about you?
Okay. Well, my journey kind of, you can say, started in 2009 when I first fled the previous regime, TPLF led Prime Minister Meles Zenawi's regime here to US. Because we were, I was the editor-in-chief of the last editor-in-chief of a newspaper called Tamerat Negera, and it was started by 6 friends. The newspaper was successful, but when you're successful in journalism in terrible countries, you're not rewarded with, with at least continuing to work in your own country. So we're faced with the possibility of being charged minimum of 15 years on terrorism, and we decided it was not worth it. After we left, 2 of my colleagues, Mesfin Nagash, the managing editor, Abi Taklamaram, the founding editor-in-chief, were charged in absentia. And while I was in the States, trying to, rebuild my life, going to school, working, but missing home and being exiled was a very tough journey. So in those periods, I really thank social media for allowing me to kind of keep my life as a journalist, both as self, at the same time to be relevant in what was being discussed in Ethiopia. It kept me relevant, but it also kept me distracted, I guess, from my life here. Or my responsibilities, because generations that, earlier generations, exiles, were not distracted as we were by what was going on back home. I remember in 2011 how I was very much engaged in the Egyptian revolution of the Tahrir Square as if it was my story. So in 2015, in 2012, Meles Zenawi dies, and in 2015, a kind of reform starts happening within the ruling party, and the reform became very full-fledged in 2018 by the ascent of our current Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, to the position, and a really promising reform was born. In part, the reform agenda was, inviting exiled journalists, activists, and politicians, releasing imprisoned politicians, things of this nature, changing some laws, unblocking websites that were blocked by the government. And we were personally invited, directly or indirectly, and I just jumped into it. I took a one-way ticket to home. It was a fantastic thing to see my mother after 9 years, reconnect with my friends, reconnect with my girlfriend, previous girlfriend, and getting married, starting a new media company. It was fantastic. My focus, as my colleague was saying, his focus was on corruption. My focus was on literally reforming the ethnic federalism, because I believed, and many believed, that the ethnic federalism is the focus of our problem. A country as old as Ethiopia would have multiple problems. It's not going to be one problem, the economy, the demographics, our geography, our history, all this will have burdens. But I thought that at least if we start reforming the ethnic federalism and start de-ethnicizing our politics, our economy, and even our religions, it would at least be on the right direction. That was my focus. And it didn't sit well with the ruling elite, and mainly because as an ethnic Oromo, they were expecting me to fully support everything they do just because I'm an Oromo, and I don't buy that. And my 9 years of stay in the United States have even made me kind of detest ethnic politics even more. If you see a country as diverse as this, build such a great country with all its past, the main thing is how it managed with all its challenges, its identity politics, be it coming from the left or be it coming from the right. America has done a great job of changing its own story and direction. I was hoping that for my country.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't sit well. When he said, people invaded his house, started shooting him with handicap, it was a similar story for me, because one Friday on December 10th, 2021, just while I was in my room, they did that. They invaded our house. I was living with my in-laws because my mother-in-law was sick, and we moved in to assist her. My wife was literally a full-time nurse at that time, and also managing our media company. And over 15 federal police officers invaded our house. One of them took my picture using handicap. I asked him, could I at least even wash my face? They didn't care. They took me, and with a different and many more forces, I was returned home. Mm-hmm. Took all the possible electronics, phones, iPads, everything, and they went to the studio and office. The studio was built by, our supporters. I was able to raise over $25,000 from all over the world, from Ethiopians who were willing to donate for our media. And they took everything. Oh. They cleaned us out. But that was not the major thing. After they took me, they said to the family, you can come to the federal police station in Addis, and then you can visit him there. You can bring him his medicine, his food. But when I got there, they took me to a different place. And they took me to a military black site. Mm-hmm. They didn't tell my family where I was. For 7 days, the family did not know where I was. They don't know whether I was alive, I was dead, or even where I was. And that was very tough for my family.
Yeah, that would be terrible.
I didn't know how tough it was when I was in prison. Mm-hmm. When I came out, it was difficult. And after the 7 day, I appeared at the court. Mm-hmm. And it was very much thanks to the...
Oh, it's okay.
It's the first time I'm speaking that way.
Oh.
Man, I'm weak.
Thank you for sharing your story. You don't
Go
have
ahead.
to say anything you don't want to. But
No, the thing is, being a journalist, being an activist, mm-hmm. you don't know what you put your family through.
Yeah. It's true.
Okay. And I appeared at court.
Thank you.
And after appearing to the court, I was transferred from a black site to a normal police station. Mm-hmm. It's then that I learned how much campaign was going on, how much people have spoken. I thought I was forgotten.
Never forgotten. Yes.
And I'm sorry.
No, please.
And In the police station, we started going to the courts again. The investigations continued. The interrogations continued. It was thank God I was not tortured, but I met a lot of people that were tortured. I was extremely lucky. People who were very strong, who had a lot of stories to tell, who had a lot of goodwill for this country, were threatened with days. Their families not knowing even where they were for 3 months, 6 months, even a year. So I'm actually the luckiest. And then the pressure continued on the government, including, a press release by a National Press Club. And then the government decided, they decided not to charge me, but they still kept me in prison. After repeated investigations, I think they didn't find anything. At least, again, I was very lucky because the court decided to release me on bail. And then another luck, God loves me a lot, because there are a lot of journalists currently that are released just like me on bail, but they were denied to leave the country. And after I was released on April 6, one of the challenge was, my wife and the rest of the team were able to run the media, borrowing items, buying new items again. But it was very difficult because I couldn't go back to media. It was obvious. They kept the possibility of being charged over my head.
Of course.
And then I couldn't. The next 7 months was like practically a house arrest. And we started contemplating what our next steps should be. And the possibility of exile came again, and there was no way, coming to the West, be it in Europe or Canada or US again. And we decided the best strategy was to use Thailand as a next step. We did not know what the third place would be, but at least just to be safe, we went to Thailand. And while we were in Thailand, I was applying for fellowships and doing anything, getting checked up again. CPJ, I have to thank them a lot. Free Press Unlimited, these organizations kind of facilitated my transportation and even some expenses for my medical checkups. And the Ethiopian community here, especially Global Alliance for Human Rights Organization, assisted us in our stay in Thailand. Okay. And then an invitation came from National Press Club, assuming that National Press Club people assumed that I was already in the States. And you guys invited me to this event. In your invitation letter, here we are. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming and sharing. And for your wife as well. How many journalists are still in jail in Ethiopia, and what are the challenges faced by journalists in Ethiopia amid the peace process?
Oh, okay. The RSF report, my colleague here just mentioned earlier, states that Ethiopia is actually again descending in press freedom. And just last week, the government made a new arrest of over 20 journalists and even some professors, especially focused on Amhara region in the Amhara ethnic group. And I think, I don't have the exact number, I think we have about more than 50 journalists now from various media in prison. And I know that over 20 journalists about 2 weeks ago were released who were also imprisoned. I think CPJ would have the perfect and up-to-date data. The peace process is going to, let's say that many Ethiopians are happy, at least that we're not in active combat stage like we were a couple of years ago. So at least, you know, the ceasefire and the kind of agreement between the Prosperity Party and TPLF is going to have some spite from the conflict. But this is the re-emergence of the EPRDF in a different form. The party that expelled many of us and imprisoned many of us. And I think international organizations, the international community will be much more focused on the peace, that they would ignore some of the human rights abuse and abuse against journalists that would come after the peace process. I mean, we all have our issues when we open the detail of the peace process, but that's not the topic in the question.
Yeah.
But I don't see a lot of hope for freedom of press or freedom of expression or safety of journalists from the peace process, because journalists or the media is not part of the deal or the topic. And the international community that is enforcing the peace is much more focused on disarmament, ceasefire, you know, delivering food aid for the hungry, delivering aid for the displaced millions, women and children. And this would make the safety of journalists, press freedom, and independence media, I think, at the back foot. I think that would be the direct impact and the immediate impact.
Interesting. Yeah. How can we, emphasize press freedom there, make that a higher priority?
I think organizations like National Press Club and CPJ should focus and make more pressure on the international community, because that would be the accessible organizations or institutions to make press freedom part of the peace deal. We know that the Ethiopian government is short of foreign currency. We know that organizations like TPLF and also OLF are very desperate to be in good favor of United Nations, United States of America, IMF, and we should, NPC and CPJ could direct their attention towards them so that they can enforce or at least make issue of press freedom part of the discussion.
Right.
I think this could be one part where the international community or part of the international community can work. That's my take.
That's interesting.